Good evening. You know, it feels really good to get up on the feet for a little while. Do you know what I mean? You've been quite patient, haven't you? Does anyone feel the urge to stand up for 10 seconds? Let's do that. Stop behaving like machines. You have bodies. Yeah, okay, that's enough. Sit down. When you are in this line of work, you get a lot of questions. And some of these questions you get quite a lot. I was expecting my friend here to talk, he did not. But there is one question that without a doubt takes the first place among all these questions. And this is a question that I have literally heard thousands of times. And it's a question, I've heard it today as well, and with very few exceptions, I've heard this question every single day for years. And the question is this one: are you the real one? I mean, people will literally stop me in the streets, or at bars, or at restaurants, or in airports and say, hey, are you the real one? One time, even at a border control, customs and immigrations. I'm standing in line, doing my thing. I go up to the counter and present my passport for inspection, and the officer looks at it, he looks up at me and says, are you the real one? Now that was slightly disconcerting. You know. And this got me thinking, you know, this question. For me, this is really, it has become a very big question. It got me thinking. Because there are actually cases where people have mistaken one of us for the other. That happens sometimes. Like on one occasion, well, several occasions actually, where we have been doing demonstrations. So we would sit next to each other, and people would come into the room, acknowledge me, acknowledge the robot. They would leave, and we can hear them talking in the hallways, saying things like, where is the robot? I want to see the robot. It's just there, you came from. No, I was just there, there's no robot there. I want to see the robot. So that actually happens. Or this case that is quite often cited now, when I put the robot in front of a class of students early one morning in their defense to give a lecture, which I would normally do myself, but I was sitting in my office remotely controlling everything. And to our big surprise, several of the students did not realize this until the break. Right? So they were sitting there for 45 minutes, not understanding that the person in front of them was a robot. And that has spawned a lot of jokes about students at Aalborg University, and the professors as well. We thought by then that the ones who would be more slowly in understanding this would be the guys in the back, you know, the people sitting in the back closest to the fire escape so they can easily get out if there's some kind of trouble. But that turned out not to be the case. They were quite early in understanding the scenario. It was the section in the middle. I'm looking at you right now. Middle people. It took them quite a long time, and some didn't understand until they saw other people taking photos of the robot during the break. Why are they taking pictures of the teacher? We don't normally do that. Yeah. And he actually likes to teach. That's part of the game. Oh, there was this time. I think you're going to like this one. We went to Peru in South America for some talks and demonstrations. And when we got back home, I had to unbox him from this big wooden box that is what we use for long transportations. And I opened the box and I could see something had shifted. It was not the way that I left him. But everything was in working order, so I didn't think too much about it. So that was okay. But after a while, I heard the true story behind this. It turns out that the customs inspector in the Lima airport had inspected this box, which my students sometimes refer to as a coffin, but really it's not. He had inspected this box, and then he called up my host, the Lima Chamber of Commerce, and demanded a death certificate for the person inside the box. So I'm thinking, you're in an international airport, in the freight division, okay, and you have this big wooden box. and there's something inside it that you think is a human corpse, and you worry about the paper trail. Maybe there are some other issues here as well. Now, we reflected a little bit about this back home. One of the reasons was that the DK is actually in the Guinness Book of Records as one of the, no, not one of the, but the most lifelike android in the world. So we've been kind of worried that the people of Guinness should learn about this incident and revoke his status. And it's not very fun to be the most death-like android in the world for very obvious reasons. Right. So there are cases where people have mistaken one of us for the other. That does happen. But most of the time, really, people do understand. They know the difference between us. But it's just a really, really good way to start up a conversation. Are you the real one? Yeah. So what do you answer? Well, if you catch me on a really good day, I might say, yeah, I'm the man. If, on the other hand, you catch me on a really bad day, I might say, yes, that's me, get over it. But most of the time, oh, I should say also, there's another version, and that is the Ishiguro-inspired version. He says that, well, you can only be sure if you open us up. But we don't want to have people getting too many crazy ideas about that. This is an area where we don't want people to get really creative. But the answer that I give most of the time is a different one, and it's surprisingly simple. And the answer is this: we are both real. I am a real person, and this is a real robot. We are both real, and so are you, by the way. Because you see, there is this assumption in the question, are you the real one? That one is real and the other is not, that one is real, the other is fake or unreal. But that's actually not the case. And I've grown to really appreciate this question, are you the real one? Because it seems to be smack in the middle of what I try to achieve, which is to understand the nature of the robot and to understand the principle of its deployment. So which kind of robot should we actually put where? We are both real. And chances are that we are moving towards a society where you will have very real robots, very close to your workplace, to your home, to the institutions, to the schools, to any kind of position that you can possibly imagine. In fact, any place it makes sense to have a computer today, you should probably expect a robot tomorrow. But what are the consequences of this, then? The fact that we are both real. Well, one of the most important things is to, of course, understand that we are not real in the same manner. We are not equal in that sense. We occupy different places in the structure of the world. And there are a couple of very surprising aspects of this. I think of robots as a specific kind of instance in the world, and I call them digital natives. Now, the digital native, to me, is not a generation of young people trying to figure out what to do with their lives. For me, the digital native is a robot, because they are truly grown out of the digital revolution, and they are deeply rooted in the world of computation. And that means that the inside workings of a robot really is a digital one. This is how they understand, this is how they meet us, this is how they make sense of the world, through their digital eyes. But those eyes, the digital eyes, are very likely to be the extra set of eyes that is needed in order to get a classroom to function. And those digital hands are very likely needed to be where extra hands are needed in healthcare and many other aspects. And the extra ears, the digital ears, we've heard from different aspects of the digital ears now throughout this evening. They are likely to be there when children are raised to become members of society. We are going to live together with the true digital natives, and those are not people. They are actually something quite differently. Some have speculated, should a robot have a kind of electronic personhood? Should we assign some kind of identity to a robot? This is something that colleagues around the world are taking very seriously and that we are considering. There are some issues with that. For instance, if a robot is truly and fully digital, that means that it's networked, of course, and its sources of intelligence are vastly distributed. So in that sense, it might be a little bit tricky to actually find a single point of entry where you can say, this is the entity that I want to name, that I want to give some kind of entity. But we will be needing some kind of way of identifying these new citizens that we will coexist with. And one of the reasons for that is that we are real, both of us, and we form relationships. Here you see me looking at you, looking at me, looking at you. And I cannot imagine a child growing up accompanied by a robot without that child developing a very real, a very authentic emotional bond with that machine. This will happen, for sure. This is how machines understand emotion. This is not the way we do it. When we understand emotions and look at each other, we do not construct these bars and graphs inside our mind. We don't really quantify it. We move very easily among all these different emotions that we see every day. Machines are different. We should not expect them to be as we are. Even though we might design some of them to look like us, that makes a lot of sense. But they are different. I suspect sometimes that there is a very sinister backside to the question that I started with, are you the real one? And that is that perhaps it is becoming more and more difficult for people to actually make the distinction between man and machine. And I have come to suspect over the last 3 or 4 years when I've been doing this, that there is a big issue here of real importance. And the issue is that we treat each other more and more like robots and less like people. We're betrayed by our own metaphors in that way. If someone is doing a really good job, we say, yes, he's like a machine. Is that a good thing? I don't think so. It's a good thing to be a machine if you're a machine, but it's not a good thing to be a machine if you're actually a man. Or if an organization is performing well, like the team here at this evening's conference, how do we put that into words? We say, well, this TEDx event was run like a well-oiled machine. Is that a good thing? To be a well-oiled machine? A whole lot of other pictures come to mind when I think of that. So we actually develop this kind of thinking that it's probably really, really good for us to be machines. I'm worried about that. I'm very worried. And the reason I'm worried is that if we treat each other like robots, we lose sight of not only who we are, but we also lose sight of why it's important to embrace these new technologies, because they actually hold a lot of promise in the world that we're about to enter. And I think this is a real issue. One of the consequences is that we spend so little time talking about the real issue, and so much time talking about, the stupidity of it. The real issue is, what kind of society do we want to share with our technology? In management theory, there is a word for this. This is called management by spreadsheet. What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. The idea is that you can see people as parts of a machinery. And if they perform well, like machines or good components in a well-oiled mechanism, then all the spreadsheets are green at the right side and leaders are happy. Let me tell you right now, this is a very, very childish, very, very immature form of leadership, because it fails to recognize the crucial distinction, the importance of understanding what it means to be a human and what it means to be a machine. I would really like us to get rid of all that stuff and acknowledge the fact that we are people with needs, with thoughts, with emotions, with passions, because that's what is defining us at the end of the day. The one true characteristic, really, of the human condition is not our ability to build machines or to become machine-like. It is our ability to come up with very creative and surprising solutions to problems that we find in the world around us. We call that science. And equally important, our ability to come up with creative solutions to the mystery of our own existence. We call that art. And these things are what is really essentially human, and the human condition that should be appreciated perhaps above any other. So, can you ask, should we be worried about this machine generation racing against us at high speed? Well, that depends. It depends on how you define yourself. Let's say, for instance, that you define yourself by your ability to drive a car. If this is the case, you should truly be worried, because the robots are ready to get out of the passenger seat. Trust me, they are ready. Yeah, it is the robot in the passenger seat, and we were driving pretty fast. We sometimes switch places, actually, but only in parking lots, just to see how people react to it. It's kind of fun. Yeah. If you define yourself by your ability to operate heavy machinery, like an airplane, things like that, you will be in trouble, because here again, the machines are ready to get out of the passenger seat into the front and take charge. And this will happen very, very soon, leaving ample time for flight captains to pursue other interests, which I think is a very good thing. We do need to address a few issues, though. This is from the check-in procedure when we are flying together. It's not a very dignified way of traveling. So, dear people at the airport, please come up with an alternative to the odd-size scanner for people who are traveling with their robots. It is not a good thing to do. Yeah. Now, I do not define myself by my ability to drive a car or by my ability to fly an airplane. That's a good thing, because I don't know how to do that. I'm much more defined by my ability to go places with intent, with purpose, and to generate meaning as I go there. And this is what is important. Let the machines do what they do so well, and let us do what we are the masters of being the real persons. You are real just as me, but what kind of real do you want to be? Do you want to be a machine kind of real, or do you want to be a human kind of real? I know for sure what I prefer, and the answer is, I think, obvious. So this is us, the real me, the real robot, the real human, signing off, thanking you for your attention. Have a pleasant evening, and God bless.